do volcanoes really create fertile soil, or is that just something that somebody said once and that's been repeated ever since then? Well, the short answer is that yes, they do, but we can dig into it more than that. So what I'm showing you right here is a picture of Mount Vesuvius in the background with Pompeii, agricultural fields on the outskirts of Pompeii and up front. And Pompeii is one of the most famous examples of a really destructive, explosive volcano. But what makes it so famous, in part, is that it killed so many people. And why it killed so many people is that so many people were living there. And the reason that so many people were living there, especially in classical times, is that it was an area that was really agriculturally productive. And the reason it was so agriculturally productive is because of those volcanic soils. Vesuvius had erupted before, creating those volcanic soils, which were really, really good for agricultural production, especially for things like wines that need acidic soil. But why is volcanism good for soil in the long term, and what factors specifically contribute to that, and how can they vary across different types of volcanoes in different settings? So there are different kinds of volcanoes. There are many different kinds of volcanoes. We can kind of largely group them into two main categories of styles of eruptions. So the first one is kind of the classic volcano, like we saw with Vesuvius, something like a shield volcano. And those are the ones that like to have these big explosive eruptions. And these have a thicker magma. And so because they have a thicker magma, the magma gets more stopped up in the conduit leading up to it, which leads to an explosive eruption. So parts of the volcano might even be blown off the side, might be blown off because there's so much pressure under it, so much force being generated. And because of all of that pressure, it's going to generate a ton of ash and tephra. So the lava here is not the important thing, the most important thing. I mean, the lava, you can switch into a different color there. If I can figure out how, maybe not. The lava here is, relevant, and lava can go far, and people certainly build communities and agriculture on volcanoes, more so on more shallow slopes volcanoes, though. Like that. And this is going to have an effusive style of eruption where it's just kind of going to ooze lava for a really long time. But what's really key in these explosive eruptions is the ash. So it's going to build and build and build pressure for a really long time. And then we're going to have ash. And these ash particles are so small that they can travel really, really, really far. And we can build up layers of ash that are sometimes meters thick. So really, really thick layers of ash close to the volcano, and then they'll get smaller and smaller as we get farther away from the volcano, but we have ash everywhere. And what's in this ash is stuff that at some point came from within the Earth's mantle. And this is made up of a bunch of nutrients that essentially act as fertilizer. So some of those important nutrients include calcium, that's beautiful, and phosphorus. Those are just some of them. There's actually a ton of others. But those are going to get really concentrated into this ash and lava mixture. And that's what's going to be what the ground is now made up of. And so over time, those can now weather. And the ash is going to weather more easily because it's less compact than the lava that really cools down into a hard rock. And now we basically just have fertilizer that makes up the ground. Of course, in the immediate, it's not going to be good for plants because if you're covered in ash and or lava, you're going to die. But in the longer term, if you just put down a whole bed of fertilizer, that's going to be really good for plants. Excuse me. I also mentioned that lava rocks tend to have more acidity, which is really good for some plants like grapes. And we also know that basaltic rocks, that lava rocks have certain kinds of properties like being really porous, which means that they can hold on to water for longer, which means especially in drier, more arid environments, they can slowly release water back into those plants, which is really helpful to them if they're in a water limited condition. So, hope this helped.